Hi, we to continuing the conversation with Sadie. Today's guest is someone whose work sits right at the centre of what season two is all about. Practice, culture, interaction, and the craft of care. Professor Martin Green is one of the most recognised voices in adult social care. As Chief Executive of Care England, he has been a leading advocate for the sector, championing quality, dignity, and the conditions that allow good care to flourish. His work spans policy, leadership to change, and the realities of care providers and the people they support. Martin has spent years navigating the complex landscape of social care, from funding and workforce challenges to regulation, innovation, and the cultural shifts needed to create environments where care is not only delivered, but really experienced. He has a deep understanding of how leadership shapes practice, how culture influences outcomes, and how the sector can evolve to meet the needs of the future. What I value most about Martin's voice and why he's such a powerful guest for this season is that he never talks about care as a purely operational or regulatory system. He talks about people. He talks about relationships. He talks about culture. He understands that the quality of care is created in the everyday interactions between carers and the people they support, and that leadership has a responsibility to protect and nurture those interactions. Martin, I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. Oh, okay, so for section one, we want to go into practice and culture. I just wanted to understand, because this season is rooted in the idea that care is a practice, something shaped by culture, behaviour, and the everyday actions of the people delivering it. When you think about care as a practice, what's that mean to you?
Well, I think that it means to me the interaction between the carer and the people they support, and also the people around the person that you're supporting. So, practice is about how you start a process which begins with asking people what can make a difference to them. And I think one of the problems is that often we have situations where, for example, somebody goes and does an assessment and they just assess people's deficits. They don't assess what they can do. They don't start from saying, how do we enable this person to have their best life? And also, it's about asking people that question: what will make a difference to you? And sometimes it's the small things, not the big things. And our responsibility as carers is to enable people, not to do to them, but to enable them. And for me, it's that essential understanding of the person you're supporting, and also getting them to articulate as best they can what support they want from you and what the parameters of that should be. So for me, it's about that interaction with the person you support and enabling them to live their best life.
Um, Perfect. Agree more. I think that was a brilliant answer. Yeah, something to take for us all to take in. What sorts of conditions do you believe are essential for good care to take root?
Well, I think people have to create a culture of openness, of
Yeah.
accountability, but
Yes, that's the
also,
word I was looking for.
yeah, but also managers need to create that openness and accountability, and also enable members of staff to be able to make decisions that are in the best interests of the person they support with
Yes.
the person they support. So for me, the culture has to be about openness. It has to be about accountability. It has to be about sharing experiences and learning together. So I would like to see as well cultures that, for example, don't talk about what went wrong, but talk about how a particular situation began, identify what the issues were, think about what the responses were and think about how we can improve things for the future so that we learn from experience. And for me, that has to be a sort of cultural basis on which a service develops. And then you start to see that people are really clear about the values of the service, and then they're really clear about what that means in terms of how they interact with people. So I think, values-based services are absolutely have to be at the center, but then people need to know with every small decision as well as every big decision, is this in line with the values of openness, transparency, accountability, dignity, respect? All those things need to be at the center of a service, and they need to be manifest in all the little things as well as the big things.
Yeah, and that's from series one, which is about reflection, your embedded why, the roots of what we're doing, why are we doing it, and what are our core values and beliefs. Yeah, brilliant. Sorry, I've got nothing to add because I just think that's awesome. You've seen a wide range of care environments. What distinguishes a healthy culture from a struggling one?
Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that it's not about structure or about rules. It's about that values-based approach. It's about everybody understanding that you work within a team. It's about support to one another as well as to the people you support. It's about that openness and that transparency. And one of the other things that I think we should remind ourselves that care is about a team and everybody's part of that team. Now, recently I went into a care home, and what was lovely was I saw a really lovely interaction between a lady who lived in the care home and the cleaner in that care home.
Yes.
And that was so important because the lady who was the cleaner in that care home, she was responsible for the cleanliness of the environment. And of course, in care settings where people are vulnerable, you have to have a very high level of cleanliness. But she never forgot that she was not cleaning a room. She was interacting with somebody who lived in that care service. And she is as much part of that care team as the care manager, the home manager. And what was great about that was I really saw as well that other team members respected her for the role that she played. So I think it's about how everybody buys into the values. It's about how everybody is respected as a professional, as well as you respect the people you support. But also, one of the things I've noticed, you cannot have a good quality service if you're not treating your staff in the same way that you would want to be treated yourself. And, it's all about that interaction. It's about personal connection, and it's about values. And it has to literally go right across the service.
Brilliant. And this is what the podcast is about. It's about the human side of care. It's the bigger picture as well as the everyday. Very, very important, as you've just highlighted. How do leaders influence culture in a way that genuinely supports frontline practice?
Well, I think they have to be really clear about what the values are, and they have to make sure that their actions are in line with those values. So if we talk about openness, accountability, transparency, what you have to see as a manager is that you have to, first of all, devolve that accountability to your colleagues. You have to give them clarity about the values of the organization. You have to support them in difficult times as well as in good times. You have also, if you're giving people responsibility and accountability, you have to also, when things go wrong, not jump up and down and say you made a mistake, but try and get to the root of what happened and why, and make it a learning process. Now, I'm not naive. I know that managers have to make sure that services run effectively, but I also think as well, one of the things I say to my colleagues is I'm very happy for people to make mistakes. God knows I've made so many in my career.
It's a learning opportunity.
It's absolutely.
That's what I say.
And it's not the mistake that's the issue. It's how you respond to the mistake. First of all, you need to make really clear remedial action so that the person who's delivering the service is protected and supported. Then you need to recognize that there's a fallout for the staff. So you have to then make a decision. as to whether or not you think that person needs more support, more training. Or sometimes, if it's a really, really gross error, it might be that this is so outside the values of this service that you cannot continue with that member of staff. And we have to recognize that those situations will arise as well. But I think the more open, the more transparent the culture, the more engaged people are, the less you will find those terrible incidents happening.
Yeah. And also, I'd just like to add that if you are a manager for care home, because this is aimed for carers at any level, cleaners, carers, advocates, anybody. Because care is care. You're either in it or you're not.
I totally
So
agree.
comes to care, it's finding out if the employee actually feeling is it the right job for them? Are their core values aligned with the company's? That I'm supporting the manager here. So sometimes I know we all need staff, but you've got to have the right people. I'd rather have 3 really good people supporting my business than 10 who just their heart wasn't in it and they're not invested. And that's the other part.
Absolutely. And one of the things, Sadie, that I'm particularly concerned about is that there is a view, I think, in government that there are lots of people who are not in employment, education or training who could then just be care workers. Well,
Yes.
actually, being a care worker is a very complex and skilled occupation. It's a profession, and also
it is a profession.
Yeah, exactly. And it needs people with the right values. And that's why recruiting on values, because in a way, you can teach anybody the skills, but you need the underpinning values. And care work is very complex and very challenging. It's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
And so I really think you're right. We have to look at this on the basis of, recruitment on values, and then train people on skills, yes, but recruitment on values. And the values of the organization need to be very, very open and clear so that people know that they're buying into an organization with a set of values that they have to uphold in every single moment of their practice.
Absolutely. And I'm a care worker, domiciliary care worker myself, my own private micro business. And I make sure I'm registered, my training is up to date, and I see myself, I would love to see carers called personal assistants, personally, because we do a lot more than what people actually realise.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's something really important, though, Sadie. We've got a job to do, all of us who are in leadership positions, to try and get people to understand that this is not a job, it is a profession. It requires people who have a multiplicity of skills and values. And it is something where people who commit themselves to it will get a lot in terms of the reward of doing something that's valued by the people they support. But I think we also need to recognize that we need to value as a society the role of care workers, because they do an amazingly important job.
Thank you. And that's everybody out there as well. Who cares? Money level. Amazing.
Great.
Let's keep going. Let's get it out there. What does a care culture look and feel like when it's working well for both staff and the people they support?
Well, I think what it looks like is a good, happy team.
Yeah.
It's about people supporting one another. It's about also, sometimes it's about the relationships. It's always about the relationships, about the relationships with the staff and the person you support. It's about the relationships between colleagues. It's about how you support each other. It's about a feeling as much as about a process.
Feeling, yeah.
And it's really interesting because I make it my policy to go into lots of care services, and you really can tell sometimes when you go in. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's about those things. And some of those things are quite difficult and intangible on some levels, but when you see them, you know they're there. And so I think but it is about that mutuality of respect between everybody who's involved in that community, whether they're a person using the service or a person delivering it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And hopefully the viewers can relate to that as well. I would have thought so. That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing so much with us. I absolutely love your positivity as well. That's really, really inspirational for me. We're going to go into section 2. We want to talk about, again, we've highlighted the importance of this, interaction and relationships.
At the end of the day, we're dealing with people, so this is always going to be really important, and something that I don't think AI could ever take over, because it's not installed. It's not programmed for a robot, is it? It's all about emotionals, emotional side of care, emotional intelligence. I just want to sort of highlight 5 few moments that define the experience of care. So, in your view, what role do everyday interactions play in the overall quality of care?
Well, I think they are the foundation for the overall quality of care. And, one of the things that we should remind ourselves, that if you are somebody who might not, for example, be able to get out much, or might not be able to engage with people that you probably did before because of a stroke, or because you're living with dementia, etc., things that may seem small to people who are, in other contexts, are really important to people who are in care services. And it can be so many little things. It can be even how somebody puts a cup of tea in front of you and how they engage with you when they give you that cup of tea. It's about saying, I'm bringing you something, but also I'm not bringing you a cup of tea. I'm bringing you an opportunity to engage, to talk, to be the person you are. And also, one of the other things that I think is really important, and it's very sad to me, that I often see people who are defined by their disability in the system. And actually, it's as if they are just the person with the disability. What we need to know is that people we support have led rich lives, and they've got loads and loads of experience and be helpful. Now, a really good example of that was, I went to a care home and they were having a visit from the mayor. And there was a lady in that care home who used to work in the council. And the care home manager said to me, "Oh, I was so worried about what to do and how I would address the mayor and all these things." And then she said, "I suddenly realized Joyce was doing that all her career." So Joyce then did this wonderful little briefing session with all the staff and residents about what you do in a mayor's visit. Now, what that was great about, there was a recognition that that woman had so much experience that could be useful. But often people are seen in terms of just that they have had their stroke, or just that they have fallen downstairs, or just that
Yeah,
they can't manage anymore. But
yeah,
that does not wipe who they are. And that, for me, is essential part of good care. It's
yeah,
recognizing that people have things they can always bring to the party. Care
yeah,
is not a one-way street. It's about interactions.
absolutely. Yeah. And I talk a lot about what I call people's super skills, superpowers. And I saw a wonderful phrase the other day, and I know it's been around for quite a while, about taking the word disability and then they take the word able out of it. And I love that. And I think that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
And I love that. And it's even if you're a parent, any level, paid, unpaid, advocate, leader, everybody has a super skill that's just with them. It's what you've been shaped to be as an adult and who you are. And some people don't even realize they've got it. And for me, I would say to people who are care workers, your super skill is probably your interpersonal skills, how you relate to others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very,
Couldn't
very
agree.
advanced
No,
compared to
no,
somebody who doesn't work in care.
no, I couldn't agree more, Sadie. And one of the things is, though, that one of the things we have to do as care workers and people in the care sector is we have to also spend enough time to get to know the person, to know their
Absolutely.
preferences, to know
Yeah.
their experiences. And it's only by knowing them that you can unearth their super skills.
Yeah, absolutely. When organizations support parents to build meaningful, human-centered relationships with the people they support. So we're talking about how can it be done?
Well, I think one of the things you've got to do is give people time and permission to engage. And so often, and I do think one of the real challenges for care workers, and I think it's particularly challenging for home care workers, is that often you're commissioned on very short time frames to do specific things. And then that doesn't give you the time to engage or talk with the person. And so I think there is a real problem about how the system hasn't caught up with what good quality care is about. And what I see there as I go about and I see home care workers, and despite the fact that they're not commissioned properly and they don't have lots of time, I still see amazing examples of people who connect with the people they support. And also, I think we should. And I think we should also recognise that somebody who's living in their own home with a disability or with a problem such as a stroke or whatever, they may not see anybody except their care worker in a week. And so that relationship is really important and it needs to be nurtured. And I see so much
Absolutely.
great examples of home care workers that do nurture those relationships. But of course, what it does do as well, though, Sadie, and you will know this better than I, is that it also means that you feel for those people. And sometimes you think to yourself, oh, I wish I hadn't had to leave Mrs. Jones because I know she's having a bad day. It might be something, it might be the anniversary of our husband's death, or it might be the fact that she is in pain or whatever it might be. And you, and as a dedicated professional, you carry that with you in a way that other professions don't necessarily do that.
And I think that's a good sort of reference point for my listeners to go into series 1, where the experts talk about boundaries. So that's how we cope with it. We can compartmentalize these things so that we can have a life outside of care. Because it's really, really important to prevent things like compassionate fatigue, to have a break in all professions, but especially care, because when you start overgiving, that's when you can really hit a dark place and your family gets affected and things like that. So that just highlights that sort of side of things. So just as important.
No, I agree. And people should go to series 1 where you talk about that, because, it's really practical and helpful, that advice on creating boundaries, because you have to do that to protect yourself, but also to be able to deliver your best for the people you support.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also you highlighted something that a educator in series 1, Mr. Tomlinson, talked about your embedded why, but he also highlighted a lot of things about not rushing, giving people the time. How does it make someone feel if you're rushing in and out? And I thought that was very, very important for care at any level. That was a fantastic point. So he's backing up what you're saying. If you're I'm self-employed, so I can give my clients, patients that. But if you're employed, you can't, especially if you do local authority cases for the council, because it's all timed.
Exactly. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, that because it's all timed in that way, it makes you into the person who does stuff rather than enabling people to do things for themselves. So, for example, in simple things, I was once in a person's home, a friend of mine actually, who'd had a stroke, and her home care worker was fantastic. And I was going to take my friend out, but what was great was the home care worker went into the bedroom and laid out the scarves and said to her, which one do you want to use? And she chose her scarf, but then the care worker enabled her. It took a lot of time for her to position it herself. But it took the time. But my friend was feeling that she was in control of making those decisions. Whereas if the care worker had just come in and said, right, we'll put that scarf on you and just tied it on, that would have been a different outcome.
Absolutely. Brilliant points, Adam. Everything you just talked about. I love that. Thank you. So give people the time, the choice, the autonomy. Absolutely. And everybody's happy, which is the culture we're creating. Brilliant. What gets in the way of good interaction, and how do leaders remove those barriers?
Well, I think the things that get in the way are the expectation that you will do things in a process way. I think the way things are commissioned gets in the way. I think the issue of time gets in the way. So, there are so many things that need to be done. Also, we must remind ourselves we're working in a regulated sector, so there are regulations to be adhered to. So all those things which are supposedly about enabling are things that are barriers to delivering really good care. But I think there are ways round that. And partly that has to be set by the leaders who give people permission to make those decisions. It goes back to what we said earlier about autonomy, but to make those decisions. And also for care workers, when they're making those decisions, to sometimes know they might be challenged on them, to be really clear then about saying, well, the reason I made this decision was because it was absolutely aligned with the values of social care. It was about delivering the best service possible for the person I support. And that's why I made that decision. But it's not easy. And also that's why, Sadie, we talked a little bit earlier about technology. One of the things I want technology to do is to do a lot of the heavy lifting of the process stuff so that we can give our care workers the time to be able to invest in the relationship stuff.
That's it. And that's what I use it for. Absolutely. Including today for this podcast. Technology is helping me get your voice out there, and also give me time to go through the process of getting to this stage with you today, if you know what I mean. So yeah, absolutely. Really good answer. I love that. How do you see emotional intelligence showing up in a high quality care environment?
Well, I think emotional intelligence is absolutely at the center of good care.
It is, and leadership.
And leadership, absolutely. And that goes back to what we said earlier about value-based things. And of course, that's something that emotional intelligence is something you can't teach. It's something that people develop over time. But it has to be about getting the right people in the right situations to be able to use that intelligence in an effective way that supports the person they're working with, but also it's about managers and organizations understanding the value of having that emotional intelligence and how you can use it to inform how you practice care. And so because it's a very intangible thing, often it gets lost, but I think it's absolutely at the center of what good care is about. And what I see in the care workers, and again, it goes back to what you said, Sadie, about a superpower. I see so much of that emotional intelligence. It is a superpower of care workers, and it's something they use really effectively. And sometimes I don't think they realize they have it, but you can see it manifest in the way in which they engage with people.
Yeah. I just want to say to my viewers, because this goes out as an audio only, you are absolutely lighting up when you talk about this. Your passion is off the Richter scale.
Oh, thanks, Sadie.
I love that because I'm the same. And you really made me think about a lovely lady who was on my podcast in series 1, first ever episode, called Vic Rayner. And her passion is through the roof. If there's anyone that I've ever met with superpowers of passion, it's her.
I know her really well.
She is amazing. And we talked a little bit about training. She was very positive about the training, but I sort of broached on the fact that I actually feel like what we do is a vocation, like nursing. And it's a way of life. It's who you are. You've either got it or you haven't. And I feel like our training needs to be done out in the field. And I talked a little bit about my training with MVQs and how much I loved it because it was done on the job. And that just thought, have a listen to the conversation.
I will do, yeah.
Really good. I loved it. And I just think she brought up so many good points. And it's literally in alignment with what you've just said as well. So I love that. I'm going to go into leadership and the craft of care, especially after talking about yourself and Vic Rayner, because I think that follows on nicely. What does good leadership look like in the context of adult social care?
Well, I think it's first of all establishing a set of values that underpin everything the organization does. I think it also is about enabling members of your team to be able to use their skills, competencies, emotional intelligence to deliver the best way possible. It's about giving people time to reflect on their practice, and particularly in situations where things might not have gone as well as we would like,
Yes.
to use that as an opportunity to reflect and learn rather than seeing it as an opportunity to chastise or say you shouldn't have done that. Also, it's about a leadership style that is open and transparent, and leaders need to be connected with their services, with the people who deliver services, with the people who use services. And in a job like mine, sometimes I think it's very easy to sit in an ivory tower. So that's why I make it my business to go out to at least a couple of care homes or care services a month, just to keep in contact and talk to people who use services, their families, volunteers, members of staff, colleagues, to know what the big issues are for them. But I think leadership is about being in touch with values, with purpose, and also with the challenges that people face in their daily lives, whether they're a member of staff or a person delivering care, and then thinking about, how do I change things to make their lives better? And I think, leaders have to be very clear that they're there for the people they support, but they're also there for their teams. And it's about how I enable my team to have as good an experience as I would expect for the person who uses my service.
And is everybody invested?
Absolutely.
Massively, that
Absolutely.
one.
Well,
Yeah.
and also, I think it's about recognizing people and validating them and giving them the feedback when they've done a good job. I mean, so often, I think care workers don't realize what an incredible job they do often, but sometimes nobody tells them that. Nobody says to them, actually, you made a difference today and you have changed somebody's life by the things that you've done. And I think, as leaders, we should be telling people that.
Yeah, I think I agree totally, 100%. But one thing that was going through my mind, I mean, I've been in the industry over 22 years, so I've had lots of different experiences, as you can imagine, has anybody who's been in the industry that long. And I think managers also have to be careful how they reward their staff, because, I mean, this is going back to intention now. Good intentions, wonderful, but things like Carer of the Year, it's lovely, but then it also does have a negative consequence of other carers feeling like, well, if she's the best, what's the point?
I agree. And I really like things that might, for example, say you are team of the year.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for getting that in.
And also, sometimes it doesn't need to be a big performance. It needs to be often a thank you. Just saying to somebody, oh, that was great. You did a great job there. Or, I really appreciate what you did today. Just having that feedback. I think one of the challenges in any role is we do want feedback about it. And we want to know that we've done a good job.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a big production number. It sometimes can be as simple as saying thanks.
Yeah. And so another example of that, I mean, this was a direct management, but I know during COVID, there was a big thing about everyone banging some friends on a Thursday or a Wednesday. I can't remember the day now.
Yeah.
And myself included, a lot of us all worked through COVID, managed it, really well. And after COVID, I personally found that a bit patronising. I would have rather had a pay rise than a clap. Now, that's just a personal opinion. I'm sorry if I've offended anyone out there. But that's an example of interaction and how you make people feel and how they perform at work. And it's not a popularity contest, which is what it can turn into.
No, exactly. And Sadie, because I thought as well, one of the things that COVID taught us was just how important some roles were and how lacking importance other was. And I thought every time I went to my supermarket, I used to thank the staff who were in that supermarket, and I thought about the people who'd driven the lorries to get the commodities to the supermarket.
Yeah.
I thought about the care workers who were going into people's homes and then going to the supermarket to get things for those people. All those people in that whole situation were all heroes. It wasn't only about the NHS, but so often it became about the NHS. And actually, if you think about the NHS, even what would have happened if those lorry drivers hadn't got those PPEs to the hospitals? What would have happened if those bus drivers had not got the staff to the hospitals? It really showed that we were all interdependent with one another. And it really showed that we all owed a debt of gratitude to a range of people who had been pretty invisible before COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful point. I absolutely love it. And finally, what do you hope leaders at every level carry forward into the next chapter of social care?
Well, I think what we've got to carry forward is that issue about the importance of social care, how it transforms lives, how we create people and in people an understanding that it's about enabling, not doing stuff to people. It's about also one of the other things that I think is not well understood is how important social care is to local economies. One of the things I see, if I go up to the north of England, I'm from the north of England, and if I go up to the north of England and I see sometimes quite deprived areas, social care is the biggest employer in those areas. And social care workers live locally, they spend locally, they are the absolute centre of that local economy, as well as what they do to support people who are needing care and support. So I think we should remind ourselves that care is absolutely at the centre of local people's lives. And also, it's important in so many levels, way beyond what people might perceive it as being. It has a vital role at the centre of a community. And I think that's the leadership message that we need to get out more. And we need to get it to the public. We need to get it to politicians. Though I have to say, Sadie, I'm so over politicians because we've been trying to do this for so long and they never seem to get it. But that notwithstanding, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep up the sort of dialogue with politicians. And also, Sadie, thank you to you for developing these podcasts, because they're a real opportunity for people to connect and for us all to have a view, an opinion, and to have a debate. And that's really, really important as well.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank you as the expert with a wealth, of lived experiences, expertise, knowledge, skills, amazing attitude, which is really important.
Thanks,
talking
Sadie.
with me today, because this is where we learn. We learn from you. And if we can just listen a little bit more, myself included, because I love talking, I think it could go a long way. And actually, we'd start to see what's really happening and make better decisions. That's how I think about it. Think a bit deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's so true as well. None of us have got the silver bullet. It's about how we all come together, listen to each other, share experiences and work together. And if we do that, we'll move forward.
Brilliant. We have skipped through quite a few subjects here because you just obliterated your answers have just gone right. So I'd just be repeating myself. So I'm going to say on that note, Martin, thank you for bringing your insight, your experience, and your clarity into this conversation. What you shared today speaks directly to the heart of season 2. That care is not just a system, but a culture. It's not just a service, but a practice. And it's shaped every day by the interactions, relationships, and leadership that surround it. You've reminded us that good care doesn't happen by accident. It's crafted, it's protected, it's nurtured by leaders who understand the human side of the work as much as the operational side. And that culture is not a soft concept, it's the foundation that determines whether care can truly flourish. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us. I hope this conversation invites you to reflect on your own practice. your own culture, and the interactions that shape the experience of care in your world. This has been Continuing the Conversation with Sadie. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other, and keep reflecting, keep growing, and keep caring. Thank you.